Today we'll be working in my workbook called The Family of Abraham, and it covers Genesis 19, verse 30 through chapter 25, verse 18. We have already done the first four chapters. We started with Lot and his daughters leaving the town of Sodom before it got destroyed and ending up in the mountains. And this is the creation of the nations of Moab and Ammon. We then have a story where Abraham goes to the city of Gerar and passes off his wife, Sarah, as his sister, and the problems that that caused. Number three, then we finally have Isaac born, and the tale of two sons, where Ishmael is now 15 years older than Isaac, and he and his mother Hagar are now pushed out and moved away from the family of Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. And then we had the well of Beersheba, where was an area of agreement between Abimelech and Abraham, and they call the area Beersheba. Now we get to chapter 5, the sacrifice of Isaac. The sacrifice of Isaac, Genesis 22, 1 through 24. Genesis chapter 22, verse 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. And God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Not only is this a severe trial for Abraham, but it's a foreshadowing of the death of Christ. I'll talk about that as we go through. How long is this from the last story? Sometime later. How old are Isaac and Abraham in this story? Isaac would have been old enough to carry a large load of wood on his back, but not yet married. We know it is before Sarah dies, so Isaac is under the age of 30. It is generally believed that he's about the age of 18 to 20. If this is the case, then Abraham is 118 to 120. This means that is about 16 to 18 years later. Do we already know this is going to be a test of Abraham's faith? Yes, it says God is going to test Abraham. Then it says, complete your son, take your son, your only son, which actually isn't true, right? Is this Abraham's only son? No, it's not. Then why does God say this? It's the son of promise. Okay. It's the only son through Sarah. It's a son of promise. Where is Abraham to take Isaac? To the region of Moriah. This area is important to later history, as we will find out soon. What is Abraham to do with Isaac there? Sacrifice him as a burnt offering. Now during this time, a lot of idol worshippers, a lot of other God worshippers would sacrifice kids to their idols, but it was never ever the case for God. So Abraham was probably known of this type of thing. God has never told him to do this before. So Genesis 22:3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place that God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. How soon did Abraham follow through with the command from God? The next morning. Who did Abraham take with him? Isaac and two servants. What animal did he use for transport? Donkey. What did he do first before they traveled? He cut up the wood for the burnt offering. Abraham is 118 years of age and has plenty of servants. Why do you think he cut the wood himself? Because he didn't want anybody else involved in this sacrifice of his own son. Where is Abraham going to? It's the region of Moriah. This is roughly 55 miles from Beersheba. On the third day, what could Abraham see? He could see the place in the distance, so it took him 3 days to travel these miles. Why is Abraham taking servants with him? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do with the servants, but maybe it's just I don't know. So the scriptures continue. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we'll come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife, as the two of them went on together. Once he saw Mount Moriah, what did he tell his servants? Stay where they were, and don't continue with them, with the donkey itself. Is there still quite a distance from where they were going? Well, this is still quite a distance from where they were going. Why did Abraham want them to stay here? Because he and his son were going to go the final route alone. He didn't want the servants to uh, know what's going to happen, I think. This is my opinion. What did he say he and Isaac was going to do? We're going to go worship and we'll come back to you. Who did Abraham say would come back to their servants? We would come back to you. God told Abraham that through Isaac, Abraham's offspring will come, yet God is now asking for Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. How sure do you think that Abraham is that Isaac will return with him? I don't know the answer to this question. I know that he believes in God and trusts in God. He also knows that God said that through Isaac, the offspring will come. So I don't know what all this will be. Where did Abraham place the wood that he needed for sacrifice? On his son Isaac. This means that Isaac has to be old enough to carry this amount of wood. What did Abraham carry? He carried the fire and the knife. So the scriptures continue. Genesis 22:7. Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. What did Isaac ask his father? Where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Who did Abraham say would provide the lamb for the burnt offering? God himself would. Why did Abraham say this? Um, because that's all he could tell his son. He certainly was going to tell his son what was about to happen. That's my opinion anyway. What did Abraham do to Isaac on the altar? Oh, we've got to read Genesis 22:9 in order to provide that, huh? When they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Isaac just follows through with all this. What did Abraham do to Isaac on the altar? He bound his son and laid him on the altar. Genesis 22:10. Then he reached out his hand. Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Did Isaac complain about being bound on the altar? He doesn't. I don't know why. Was Abraham going to go through the sacrifice? Why or why not? Yes, he was going to go through the sacrifice. God told him to do this. It was a severe test, but he knew in the past that he needed to follow through with whatever God told him. Who stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son? The angel of the Lord. Who is this angel of the Lord? Consider Genesis 12. You have not withheld from me your son. Who do you think this angel of the Lord is? In this case, then it would be Jesus. Because Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son, what did the angel of the Lord know about Abraham? Now I know that you fear God. Well, Abraham was willing to follow through with this command from God. We have to be very careful not to take this test as something that should be asked of us. God is going to ask everyone in present day to be willing to kill their. Is God going to ask anyone in present day to be willing to kill their son to prove their loyalty? Absolutely not. God expressly forbids child sacrifice. Leviticus 20:2-3. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Moloch is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Molech, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. So God doesn't believe in child sacrifice. So we should not use this as an example of, well, children should be sacrificed. This was a special, unique situation. The scriptures continue. Genesis 22:13. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. What did God provide for sacrifice instead of Isaac? A ram. Why a ram and not the normal lamb for sacrifice? It points to Jesus. While the Passover sacrifices were lambs, young sheep, like the ram God provided, Jesus was an adult. Just as a ram was a male sheep, Jesus was a man. And just as the sheep were perfect and without blemish, Jesus was sinless, having lived his life in a perfect obedience. For these reasons, the ram that God provided clearly pointed to the Lamb of God that he will one day provide. So the scriptures continue. Abraham named the place Yahweh, Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, the people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. What does Abraham name the location? Yahweh Yireh. What does Moses say continue up to the day he wrote the story? That the people still use that as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. What does this Mount Moriah become? It becomes the Mount of Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, which we see here. The foreshadowing of the death of the Messiah. Compare. What do the following two scriptures have in common? Genesis 22. And God said, take your son, your only son. John 1:14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. That both of them are the only sons. What does Second Chronicles tell us is built on the same location as where Abraham sacrificed Isaac? Genesis 22:2, and go to the region of the mountains of Moriah. Second Chronicles 3:1. Then Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah. So the temple was built on Mount Moriah, on the Temple Mount. 3. What do the following two scriptures have in common? Sacrifice him here on the mountain I will show you. Hebrews 10:10, and by that will we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. Both were sacrificed, or Isaac wasn't sacrificed, but he was given for a sacrifice. What following two scriptures have in common? Genesis 22:6. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. John 19:17. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull. So in both cases, they carried their own wood that they were going to be used for the sacrifice. And 5. What do the following two scriptures have in common? Genesis 22:8. God himself will provide the lamb for burnt offering. 1 Corinthians 5:7. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. In both cases, God provided the lamb to be sacrificed. 6. Neither Isaac nor Jesus complained about being sacrificed or placed on the cross. 7. Both Jesus and Isaac were delivered from death on the third day. And both Jesus and Isaac were long promised sons and had miraculous births. In Isaac's case, it was the third day as they were traveling up from the day of sacrifice. The scriptures continue. Genesis 22:15. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations on the earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Who calls from heaven a second time? The angel of the Lord. We have more evidence that this is not just an angel. Notice the following. A, I swear by myself, Since God is the most supreme, there's no higher to swear by. B, declares the Lord. The Lord and the angel of the Lord have to be the same. 3, what two natural items did God compare Abraham's offspring with? Numerous of the stars in the sky and the sands on the seashore. What will the descendants of Abraham be able to do to the cities of their enemies? They'll be able to take possessions of them. Through Abraham's offspring, all nations on the earth will be blessed. And all this God promises Abraham because he obeyed him. Scriptures 22:19. And Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. After the event on Mount Moriah, who did Abraham return to? His servants. Interestingly, this verse says nothing about Isaac. Any thoughts as to the reason why? I don't know. Maybe because this is still focused on Abraham, the story? I don't know. Where did Abraham, his servants, and probably Isaac return to? Beersheba. So the scriptures continue. Sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor, who's the firstborn, Buz, his brother, Hemel, the father of Aram, Hezed, Hazo, Pildash, Jedleph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. His concubine, whose name was Rumah, also had sons, Tebah, Gaham, Gahash, and Makkah. So there on the right is the family line. Remember, Nahor is Abraham's brother, and Milcah is his niece through his brother who died. Forgot his brother's name who died. Haran, his brother Haran who died. Remember, Haran's had 2 children that we know of, Milcah and Lot. And Milcah married her uncle Nahor, and Nahor also had a concubine named Buma. So this is all of Nahor's children, and it's important because down the road we're going to hear about Rebekah. So now we have the crossword, the sacrifice of Isaac. Hang on here as I move forward. Okay. God told Abraham to take Isaac to the region of Moriah. Number 5, Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac as a burnt offering. Number 8, Isaac carried the wood and Abraham carried the fire and the knife. 9, what was being built on Mount Moriah? What has been built on Mount Moriah? The temple. And 10, who is the father of Rebekah? Bethuel. Okay, 1 down. Aside from Isaac, Abraham took 2 servants with him. 2, Abraham saw a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. Number 4, after this, Abraham stayed in Beersheba. 6, it took 3 days of travel before Abraham could see the place in the distance. And 7, Abraham's animal to carry the load was a donkey. That's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.